go ahead and record. Let's start with our prayer for study on page 185. Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work, for to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. All right. I want to start out, before we do anything else, asking everybody if anyone needs advice or help on the Frankenstein paper. How much did we do last week? Did we go over the outline, or did I say we would do that this week? Okay. So yes, you have an outline in the back. So we talked about it, right? I'm sorry, I don't know if I did on Wednesday. I couldn't remember. So does anybody have a question, a problem, a concern? I can't come up with enough information, anything like that. We good? I would like you to include, remember we're doing the refutation this time. We're doing the paragraph called refutation in your outline. Did we all know where to find that in the back? Okay. So you're going to, whatever side you're not arguing, you're gonna take something that other side might say and knock it down. And then you're going to take something else that other side might say and knock it down, right? I would like to see parallelism 1, parallelism 2, antithesis, and we'll make it very easy by adding alliteration. Does everybody know what alliteration is? Would somebody, so we don't out someone who might not know, somebody tell me what alliteration is.
Is that when you put 3 words in a row at least, that they are the same starting sound?
Like you just did, the same starting sound. Mm-hmm. That almost always happens when you define it. They do not have to be in a row. But it's good if they're in the same sentence, perhaps. But you could have words in between. But having one of them at the beginning of the paragraph and one somewhere in the middle and one at the end, that's just an accident. It's not planned. That's probably going to happen no matter what you do. And that's not really alliteration. So in proximity, but they don't have to be 3 words in a row, because sometimes we end up writing very awkward, strange sounding things because we think we need 3 words together. And remember, same starting sound, not same starting letter. I don't care what letter it starts with. Conversely, just because, especially with vowels, just because it starts with the same vowel doesn't alliterate necessarily. Like open and octopus do not alliterate. The octopus opened the, oven. Oh, that would be like 3 different sounds. Octopus opened the oven, because English is so crazy and so many vowels just go, Just some random vowel, I don't know what vowel that is. And that would not alliterate, even though it would be the same letter O. Yes, sir?
Weren't we doing a refutation instead of an antithesis?
No, the refutation is a part of the paper.
Oh.
It is not a figure of speech. So let's just take a moment and look at that outline on page 181. So it is a portion of the paper. So your paper will have 6 paragraphs. And the 5th paragraph will be the refutation, the whole paragraph. So you will say, some people might say that Victor should have made a mate for the creature because he owed it to him. But I say The creature lost his rights when he started going on a murderous rampage, and nobody owes him anything except a quick trip to the state pen. So, and then you do that again. Some other people might argue, and then you come up with another argument from the other side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not the same as our figure of speech that we're just putting in. Any other questions? Going once. Going twice, okay. It's not the end, because you can always reach out to me if you do have a question. Okay, then let us move on and take a look at our poem. Our poem's a little longer, and I want to spend some time with it. It's kind of different than anything else we've looked at. First, I got to find it. Robert Browning is the husband of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And we met Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She was the How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways. And also the, I don't remember the phrase, You Have Brought Me Many Flowers. And then she said, Take these again, but they're thoughts and they're rooted in my heart. And we talked about that for a while. That was the wife. This is the husband. They're both poets. And this poem, a little bit like our mouse poem. Do you remember To a Mouse? And it told a story a little bit about this poor mouse and the farmer's coming through with his plow and he's going to ruin his home. This poem also tells a story, very subtly. Very much like Jane Austen, who subtly puts little tidbits in her writing that tell you a lot about someone, which we'll look at later. And so I'm going to read this whole poem, and I want you to answer two things. First of all, who is the speaker talking to? By the way, let me stop before I ask you the second thing and set the stage. The speaker in this poem is showing a portrait of his previous wife to someone, a painted portrait, right? And talking about it. So I want you to know who you think he's talking to, and I want to know what kind of husband he is. Is he a good husband? Is he not a good husband? This is all I'm looking for, okay? So, here we go. That's my last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will it please you to sit and look at her? I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there. So, not the first are you to turn and ask thus. Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess's cheek. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flesh that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whate'er she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one, my favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech or blush at least. She thanked men, good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900-years-old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling? Even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such a one and say, just this or that in you disgusts me. Here you miss or there exceed the mark. And if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse, e'en then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whene'er I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew. I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. There she stands as if alive. Will it please you to rise? We'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the Count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretense of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed, at starting is my object. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a seahorse, thought a rarity, which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. All right. First of all, who does he seem to be talking to?
Kind of sounds like he's talking to a servant.
He's talking to someone's servant, because at the end he talks about the Count, your master.
He's like selling the painting.
Is he selling the painting? There's a key word here that tells us what's going on. Does anybody know what the word is? Is there a word there that you're not sure what it means? There towards the end?
Munificence.
No, not munificent. It means he's very generous. I'm thinking of the word dowry. What's a dowry?
It's like offering for like it's given for when like you marry someone.
It's the money that the girl's dad gives with her to the new husband. It sounds a little barbaric to us, but it actually was a very good thing, because if he sends her away, he's got to give up the money. It was security for the woman. He can't just ditch her and keep the money. Oh, he's got to give the money back. So if there's dowry being discussed, there's a wedding being discussed. So he says, his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. The speaker is planning to marry the daughter of this servant's master, the Count's daughter. All right. Okay. What kind of husband was, okay, first of all, what happened to the lady in the painting? Why is he getting married if he already has a wife?
She's gone.
And where is she gone? There's clues. He says, actually, towards the end. Look in the first couple of lines.
There she stands as if alive.
As if alive. Is she alive? No, because you don't say as if. She's dead. She's dead. What kind of husband was this guy to her? What gives you that impression, Gabriel? Is there anything specifically that gives you the impression?
The biggest part was like this grew, I gave commands, then all the smiles stopped together.
Yeah. What about her displeased him? What was she? What kind of person was she?
So as to talk to people.
Yeah? Did she seem friendly?
Yes.
Very friendly. In fact, equally friendly to everyone. It says, she likes everything. Oh, there's my husband, there's the sunset, there's the cherries, there's the mule I lead around the courtyard. He says, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. How did he give her a 900 years old name? By marrying her. He's old nobility. He's got money and an old noble family. I gave her that. And she has the nerve, when some moron brings her about. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, look at the sunset. Oh, look at the mule. He's looking so nice today. She treated them like she treated me. And he said, if you could reason with someone like this, he says, and say, this is at the bottom of page 117, and it goes to the next line, and say, just this or that, and you disgust me. Here you miss or there exceed the mark. If you could talk to someone and say, look, we need to have a talk. You need to stop praising the cherries and start acting like you're grateful to me for everything I've done for you. He says, even then would be some stooping. I'd have to lower myself to explain this to her, and I choose never to stoop. So what Gabriel said. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, when I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? She smiles when everybody passes, 'cause she's just so doggone happy. This grew. I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped altogether. What happened to her? We don't know. Did she become depressed and pine away and die? Did she kill herself? We have no idea. But now imagine you're the Count's servant and you're setting up his next marriage and listening to this. Is this a good marriage? Is this a good candidate? No, it's not. And then as they walks away, okay, oh yeah, let's go downstairs. We're done looking at the painting. Oh, look at that, Neptune, that Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. Look at that statue. He treats the other pieces of artwork in the hallway just like her. Look, there's the wife, there's the Neptune. My goodness. This is a horrifying poem. It really is. He's a horrible man. But he never comes right out and says he's a horrible man. It's really skillfully done. We see it plain. We know this guy. He's full of himself. He's proud. It's my way or the highway. And you will act grateful to me for marrying you. Who does that? Yeah, it's horrifying. It says at the beginning, towards the beginning, none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I. So are we familiar that sometimes houses, this ever happens in museums, there's pieces of art that might have a curtain in front of them. And they only draw the curtain at certain times, like it's a particularly notable piece of art maybe, and you don't want just anybody looking at it, or it's particularly special to you. And why do you think this one has a curtain over it? By the way, I have no answer for this. I'm not fishing for anything in particular. I just find it curious. Because I'm thinking of all the reasons one might put a curtain. You know, if this is especially valuable or holy or sacred to me. Does he sound like the kind of guy that would feel that way about this painting? Doesn't. So why the curtain? What do you think, Dominic?
Perhaps it's kind of like he doesn't want to see it all the time because it brings back annoying memories.
I like that. That's a good answer. Because I was thinking, I want this guy to be better than I think he is. I want to think that, no, I don't think he is either, Dominic. I want him to feel remorse. I don't want to look at her all the time because I know what I did. But I suspect that is not the case. And Dominic's answer is much better. Yes, she was annoying. But it's a good piece of art. You know, one of the masters did the Frau Pandolf apparently is, as far as I know, this is a fictional artist, you know. But in the world of the poem, he's well known apparently. It's like, oh, this great poet, or this great artist painted this picture. I'm not going to get rid of it. But I certainly won't have to look at her all the time. I don't know. It's pretty shocking. I really like this poem, even though this guy just makes me want to scream and throw something. But it's just so well done because it's so subtle. Okay, spend at least another time through with My Last Duchess. Now that you know where it's going, if you read through it at least one more time, you're going to catch more stuff. You're going to see more stuff. All right, let us turn from that to these documents in your reading guide that I asked you to read for me. There's just a few pages, so hopefully you read them. And I want to talk about the highlights. And the first one was just this longish paragraph called The Gentleman. What is a gentleman? And first of all, I would like you to look at the bottom of that paragraph. In parentheses, in brackets, it says, it's from a book called The Idea of a University. Some of you probably know John Henry Newman, like Cardinal Newman, right? Who was Anglican, and he converted to Catholicism, right, and became a cardinal. And he was very active in education. And he wrote a book-length book. He wrote a whole book called The Idea of a University. He was setting up a university, and it was just about what do we mean by a university? What is its intent? What is its purpose, and how should it be set up? Why do you think there would be a section in a book called The Idea of a University about what makes a good gentleman? What do you think, Dominic?
If you're gonna make a university, you want to have like people that are more refined, because if you have like a lot of athletes, you're gonna have a bad reputation unless people are gonna come.
Yeah. First of all, we'd like to receive gentlemen into the university. We certainly want to send gentlemen back out into the world, don't we? You know, this is something that the classical education movement is about. Education is supposed to be to become virtuous human beings. We don't read Descartes and Frankenstein and Jane Austen so we can pack our minds full of facts about those things and regurgitate them. We do it to become different people, right? To become more virtuous. So that we ask questions like, well, science could do this, but should it? Are there things that I should value that aren't weighed and measured in labs? Like Descartes said, that's all that matters. Are there things I can't know with mathematical truth? We're supposed to become different sorts of people, right? And so John Henry Newman wants to form gentlemen. And okay, so if I say today, don't worry about anything in the past or anything, just I say to you, so-and-so is a gentleman. What sort of behavior can you think of would mark a gentleman? What would you think I mean if I said, oh, he's such a gentleman?
Polite, good manners.
Polite, good manners. Maybe he opens the door for me. Maybe he waits for me to go first and take my turn first. And I'm saying, oh, you're such a gentleman, thank you. Sometimes some of you have offered, oh, can we carry things out for you? It's okay, the ladies have done this too, but we're going to talk about the ladies in a minute. We're talking about the gentlemen. I was like, oh, that's such a gentleman. Thank you for offering to help me. There's something that we all do, gentlemen and ladies alike. It's one of the last politenesses that we almost all do. What is considered polite that almost everybody still does? It's something we say. Say again? Please and thank you. Please and thank you. At the very least. We consider it good form. You know, most families teach their kids, what do we say? What's the magic word? You know, please. So let's take a look at a couple of things. I'm not going to read this whole paragraph. But he says at the beginning, it is almost a definition of a gentleman to say that he is one who never inflicts pain. This description is both refined and, as far as it goes, accurate. He is mainly occupied in merely removing the obstacles which hinder the free and unembarrassed action of those about him. And he concurs with their movements rather than takes the initiative himself. Okay, so never inflicts pain and removes obstacles to others. Do you think Newman means a gentleman is someone who doesn't punch other people in the face? He never inflicts pain. Is that our benchmark? Like, as long as you don't punch people, you're good.
It's more like you don't ever try to actively harm someone in any way, mental or physical.
Yes. And probably mostly mental and emotional, because it goes without saying in certain circles that we don't just whack each other. That's not okay. Not okay. But we don't make snarky comments to others. We don't put them in a position that's going to make them feel uncomfortable, right? Inflict pain. I'm pretty close to 100% sure that everyone in this room has been in some sort of social situation, either with your family or friends or whatever. And you've been in a situation that made you uncomfortable. Someone said something awkward. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, it probably will eventually, okay? And the goal for the gentleman here is never to be that person, right? Who said, we all make mistakes, right? We all mess up and say the thing that we realize, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that. But we try not to. So skipping down a few more lines, it says, the true gentleman, in like manner, carefully avoids whatever may cause a jar or a jolt in the minds of those with whom he is cast. And no, he's enlightened us. He's fleshed out that definition, right? We don't jolt or jar their minds. We don't create obstacles or pain. Skipping down a little bit towards the last quarter or so, from a long-sighted prudence, he observes the maxim of the ancient sage that we should ever conduct ourselves towards our enemy as if he were one day to be our friend. Treat everyone as if you will be their friend someday, even if you're not right now. Don't do anything you're going to regret. This is the code of a gentleman. So Jane Austen lived in a world where these polite nicety, etiquette, were really much more important than they are for us today. I told you the please, thank you is one of the last bastions, and most of the time, like if I go in the bank or whatever, if there's a man in front of me, he holds the door for me. Most of the time. But we don't really, there isn't a code most of us follow, a special code. In Jane Austen's world, there was, and we call it courtesy, right? It's common courtesy to say please or thank you. Think about how courtesy is spelled. What's buried in the word courtesy? Court. It's court manners. How would you behave if you were in front of a royal personage? Behave that way with everyone. Use courtesy. Does that make sense? So that's the gentleman's side. If you flip the page, we have the ladies' side. The behavior book, A Manual for Ladies, from 1853. Suggestions to visitors. And visitors, that was not a typo. Visitors was ERS. We say ORS now. This is how they spelled it then. You know, there hasn't been standardized spelling for that long. So this is, in this particular reading, it was people who are going to go visit someone and stay there for a while. Because traveling is hard, you know. If you're going to travel, I don't know, 20 or 30 miles, you're going to stay a while. In our book, in Emma, we remember that Harriet Smith had been spending the whole summer with the Martins, with Robert Martin and his sisters. I mean, she was there the whole summer. So this is advice about how to behave when you're staying long-term. And I love this one. This is the second full paragraph on page 113. Excuse yourself from accepting invitations from persons whom you do not like. Because that's not going to end well. Here's a question. Why in the world would you ever consider accepting an invitation from someone you don't like? I can think of reasons. Can you guys think of any reasons why you'd have to get this advice? Yeah, what do you think?
To remain polite.
Okay, first of all, like, oh, I'll hurt their feelings. We've probably, I'm pretty 100% sure almost, we've all done that. Like, I don't really want to do that, but I'll hurt their feelings if I don't, so I'll go. That could happen. Can you think of another reason why I might accept an invitation to someone's home that I don't really like very much? Maybe I'm a terrible person. This is the reason I can think of this.
Other people you do like to be with might be there?
Okay, so maybe there are other guests and I want to be with them instead. I was actually thinking, because I like their place. Like maybe they have a pool and really good chocolate. Like, yeah, I really don't like you, but I like your pool and your desserts. I'm sorry that I had to reveal that to all of you, but it does occur to me that I might. Okay. And then skipping down a couple more paragraphs, it says, take care of wearing out your welcome. This seems like something also that we remember today. You know, what does that proverb say, that guests and fish smell after 3 days, right?
Is that from Don Quixote or something?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I don't know if it's original with that, but I think it is in there, yes. Yes. People, I don't know that everybody says that still, but it's a something that you hear occasionally that, you know, after a while, even the people you like, are they ever going to go home? I'm really tired of them being here. So her advice to the ladies is don't stay for 3 months unless you're really, really, really sure they want you for 3 months. Maybe you should check on that. Now, I wanted to highlight something that isn't in this. Did anybody else find something in that reading that just struck you as interesting or you want to mention?
Sleeping with the windows, like that was a big thing.
Yeah. You need to
Doors
open
and stuff, even in the
open the windows. I like air out the bedclothes. Spread all the bedclothes over chairs every day when you get up. Air them out.
it was like,
We should all start doing that.
what's that? Is that the mattress and everything?
Yeah, it would be like the sheets, the comforter, everything. Just drape them over chairs with the open window to get a little air going through them. Because, no washing machine. So, you air out the bedclothes because you don't want your bedroom to start smelling. So some of it is what, practical advice, and some of it is interpersonal advice. But one thing, and I'm pretty sure you probably all know this, but maybe not. In the time of Jane Austen and Dickens, it was a thing to go visiting. And I mean just pay a call for an hour or so, right? So in the morning, certain people might be home to receive visitors, or you might go out to pay calls. And so the servant, if it's that sort of household that has servants, they would come to the door and you would have, we would call it a business card. But it wasn't business, it was just your card. Here's my card. And you just put, and so they can, and they take it and they say, who's calling? Who's, who it is. And then they'll say, yes, show them into the drawing room, or I'm not seeing visitors right now. So, if you get turned away, it could be because they're ill. It could be because they just don't want to talk to you. You don't know. And it was considered good form to pay calls and then return calls, right? If someone is paid you a visit, then next week you go pay them a visit. Or they make you a little tea, whatever, and you just chat for a little while and you leave. It's polite. This was the thing. Obviously, among a certain class of people. Because if you're at work all day, you're not running around paying calls. These are people who aren't working for a living, right, in general. So are you guys familiar with that? I mean, you've seen it in movies. So, for example, we're going to look at here in a minute that Emma was paying a call on the Bateses, Mrs. Bates and Miss Bates, or people pay a call to the Woodhouse home. And that's what they're doing. It says they paid him a visit, paid him a call. It's a social nicety that we really don't know. No, never mind, that's a stupid question. Okay, let's take a look at the questions. But first of all, I want to read the first paragraph. the very first paragraph of a Jane Austen novel often tells you a lot more than you would think about what's going to go on and what these characters are like. And here's what we start with. Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her. What kind of person is Emma? What are some modern words? How would we describe a person like this?
Spoiled.
Okay, well, spoiled. Pampered at the very least. Nothing to vex or distress. Almost nothing. Does she usually get her way?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Not very much restraint. In fact, we'll look at that point in a minute, more in depth. This is our first introduction to apparently the most important person in the book, because it's what it's called. Yes.
And also kind of call her, quote unquote, unchallenged because of the way she acts.
Yeah. No one ever challenges her, do they?
She's overtly happy-go-lucky.
What could happen to a person like that? What kind of person might they become?
Like trying to think.
Well, might we refer to someone like that? I'm thinking of a two-word phrase. Oh, that's a very good phrase. It was a spoiled brat. I was thinking, but stuck-up works too. Does Emma seem to be a stuck-up, spoiled brat? Does she seem mean or spiteful?
But she's pretty bossy.
She's a little bossy.
Her friends.
Friend Harriet. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Yeah, but she's not. Like, does she care about her dad? Yeah. I mean, does she love poor Miss Taylor, Mrs. Weston,
Yeah.
her former governess? Yeah, she likes her. She's got friends. She's not insufferable. She could have been. So she turned out better than she could have. But yeah, this is our main character. And here's the first question I asked you: what are the two real evils of Emma's situation? And by the way, whenever I quote things in a question, it means I've taken it word for word out. What are the two evils, Gabriel?
Okay, the power of having too much of her own way and a deposition to think a little too well of herself.
Yes. The power of having rather too much of her own way, which we just talked about, right? I always get my way. And a disposition to think a little too well of herself. I'm quite talented, you know. I'm really good at what I do. I'm pretty good, if I do say so myself. And we discover very close to the beginning of the book that the latest exploit that she has pulled off is arranging for Miss Taylor and Mr. Weston to get married. She has set them up. Does everybody know, I don't know if this is a silly question, does everybody know what a governess is? Or,
Like a nanny.
yes, so like Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music, right? Maria was going to be the governess for the Von Trapps. So a nanny is more like the physical care of very small children, and a governess is more like a live-in teacher. If I came and lived with your family and I was just in charge of your schooling, I'd be your governess. But don't worry, I'm not going to do that. You're safe. And we also know something about governesses. If you're a governess, you don't have any other means of supporting yourself. And so this is our first jolt when we travel back in time to Jane Austen time. If you are a woman, you don't just go out and get a job and live alone. That's not a thing. You get married, or you live with your parents. And if you have no parents and no means of support, and you've had a good enough education to pull it off, you become a governess. You go live with a wealthy family for room and board. So immediately we know that Miss Taylor, her life hasn't been the best, right? Or you wouldn't end up being a governess. We're going to meet this situation again later in the part we're going to read for next week. Somebody, I'm stuck. I don't know how to support myself. Beatrix Potter, of Peter Rabbit fame, did not marry till she was in her 40s. She lived with her parents. I mean, she was publishing these books and everything, but she lived with her parents. Women did not live alone singly. So anyway, she has worked out this marriage, and it seems a smashing success. And so I'm good. I'm a good matchmaker. Look what I did. So, fortunately for Emma, Mr. Knightley, this is the second question I asked you, was one of the few who had what ability? To see faults. He's the only person they know, what does it say? One of the few people who could see faults in Emma Woodhouse, and the only one who ever told her of them. Even if there were a few people who saw that she had faults, he's the only one that said, "Are you kidding me?" I don't think so. Only one. Now, she has a dad that presumably, we don't hear, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't hear anything about her mother. We assume her mother has died some years before. And that was another reason why Miss Taylor came. There's no mom. We just assume. Why? Tell me about Mr. Woodhouse. What is he like? And why do you think he's managed to raise a daughter like this? A little bit full of herself and...
The daughter is in a way kind of able to manipulate him in a way, or kind of knows how to talk to him in a way, because he doesn't like going out or doing anything outdoors. I mean, hanging out with people in general. He likes to walk, and he would much rather stay home. He doesn't even want to send his driver out at night or something.
Yeah. Mr. Woodhouse, I don't think he has social anxiety. He's just, well, maybe a little bit. Okay, here, Jane Austen says it twice. And so I feel like it is important because she says it twice. I think she's a good enough author that she doesn't accidentally say the same thing twice. Here's the first thing it says. When he was now obliged to part with Miss Taylor, from his habits of gentle selfishness and of being never able to suppose that other people could feel differently from himself. And I'm telling you guys, 9 pages later, it says, his own stomach could bear nothing rich, and he could never believe other people to be different from himself. Oh, that upsets my stomach. Oh, you shouldn't eat that. I get a chill when I go out. Oh, you shouldn't go out. I hate that trip is too long. Oh, you shouldn't take that trip. It'll be too long. Right? Have you ever, can you, if you don't know someone like this, can you picture someone who just can't imagine you might like something that they don't like? It's like, oh, you don't want to see that movie. That was a terrible movie. I like that movie. I do want to go see that movie. No, you don't. You won't like it. Because they can't imagine that anyone might not be exactly like they are. That phrase says a lot, doesn't it? That I just imagine everybody else is a carbon copy of me. You're all just little me's running around, and you all feel exactly like I do. What were you going to say?
He's kind of like Emma in a certain sense. The dad.
Yes. Because she also seems to not be completely living in reality. I don't mean she's crazy, right? But she doesn't see things quite clearly. So Mr. Woodhouse, like Neil said, he doesn't want to send the driver. Oh, that's a long way for James, the driver, to go. It's like it's a mile and a half, 2 miles to the Westons. Are you kidding me? Oh, it's a long way. Oh, it's snowing. Oh, we're going to get snowbound at the west. Oh, we need to leave right away. Oh, don't eat that. Don't. Oh, did you call the doctor about that? Because I would call the doctor about it. Oh, my goodness. And so we see a conversation about Emma's relationship with Harriet that we're going to talk about in just a minute. And, let's actually, can we skip down to why does Mr. Knightley disapprove of the relationship between Emma and Harriet? Yeah, why is it, Gabriel?
He just doesn't think anything good will come of it.
Basically, yes. This is not going to go well. And here's why. Actually, forgive me. I totally messed up. He's not talking about them. He's talking about Miss Taylor and Mr. Weston. But we'll go back to what Gabriel said in a minute. Mr. Knightley says they're talking about the fact that Emma set them up. A straightforward, open-hearted man like Weston and a rational, unaffected woman like Miss Taylor may be safely left to manage their own concerns. You are more likely to have done harm to yourself than good to them by interference, he says to Emma. You know, they didn't need you. I'm sure they could have gotten together on their own. And you're more likely to have hurt yourself by, alienating one of them, irritating one of them, and ruining the relationship you have. You're more likely to have done harm to yourself than good to them by interference. Mr. Woodhouse hears this. But here's what he says. Emma never thinks of herself if she can do good to others, rejoined Mr. Woodhouse, understanding but in part. In other words, Mr. Woodhouse does not understand what he has just heard. Mr. Knightley said, you just keep your nose out of it because you could have done yourself great harm, more harm than you were going to do them good. What Mr. Woodhouse hears is Mr. Knightley is worried that Emma might get hurt. Oh, she's not afraid. She does good to anybody if she can. She doesn't mind if it hurt, she'll do it at personal expense. No, Mr. Woodhouse, that is not what he's meaning. It's not what he's saying. Understanding, but in part. This is Mr. Woodhouse. He's a little ditzy. He thinks Emma is amazing. And he thinks everybody's like him. He's not been a very strong father, we would say. Okay, so Harriet comes to visit, and Harriet lives with Mrs. Goddard, along with a bunch of other young ladies. What does Mrs. Goddard do? Who lives at Mrs. Goddard? What is this place?
Doesn't she have like a boarding school for young ladies?
It's a boarding school for young ladies. They are not the upper crust young ladies. They are the young ladies, all right? So, for example, what do we know about Harriet's family? What family is she from?
We don't know anything about her family.
We don't know anything. Nobody knows who her parents are. Nobody knows who her parents are. She's just been sort of anonymously cared for, and somebody anonymously pays for her to be at Mrs. Goddard's, which kind of, in that society, were her parents married to each other? If they were, was her dad's social class such that he doesn't want to announce it? He's come into money, but he doesn't want everybody to know he's kind of low class. Harriet's not from a fine family. All the girls at Mrs. Goddard's are not. But Emma takes a liking to Harriet. This is the next question I asked you. Emma values Harriet as someone, quote, she could summon at any time to a walk. What does that tell you about Emma? What do you think, Gabriel?
She almost thinks she's higher than Harriet, if that makes sense.
She definitely thinks she's higher than her. What does she treat Harriet like?
Like a tool for her own amusement.
Good. Yeah, like something you use. Let me read a couple things off the same section. It says, Emma had very early foreseen how useful she might find her. She could summon her at any time. and therefore would be a valuable addition to her privileges. Altogether, she was quite convinced of Harriet Smith's being exactly the young friend she wanted, exactly the something which her home required. What do we say that about? That's just the thing my home needs.
Furniture.
A piece of furniture. Exactly. I needed a table like that. I needed one of those. It's like, she's just what my home needs. Harriet Smith. Now, does Emma know this about herself? Do you know, like, if we brought her in and said, Emma, do you think you're a good friend to Harriet? What do you think she'd say?
She'd say yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm so good. I'm so good. As a matter of fact, I'm so very good that I'm going to make sure she doesn't marry anyone low class. Harriet stayed with Robert Martin and his sisters for the whole summer. She got on with the sisters swimmingly. Robert Martin has a secure income. He's a good farmer. He has a good home with a family that loves Harriet. Hello. And what does Emma advise Harriet to do? Oh, no. We can do better than that. We can so do better than that. I don't want you marrying some low-class farmer. Okay, let me see if I can find. Okay, page 25. She asked her, "Oh, what sort of looking man is Mr. Martin? Is he good looking?" And so Harriet tries to say, "Well, you've probably seen him yourself. He comes to Highbury frequently." Emma says, "Well, that may be. I may have seen him 50 times, but without having any idea of his name. A young farmer, whether on horseback or on foot, is the last sort of person to raise my curiosity. The yeomanry are precisely the order of people with whom I feel I can have nothing to do. A degree or two lower, and a creditable appearance might interest me. I might hope to be useful to their families in some way or other. But a farmer can need none of my help, and is therefore, in one sense, as much above my notice as in every other he is below it." If he were dirt poor, he might be a charity case, in which case I might pay attention to him because I could do him some good. But someone of the class of Mr. Martin, I can't really do anything for him. He doesn't need me. But he's certainly not of my status, and why would I even notice someone like that? Now, let's go back to this next question. Why does Mr. Knightley disapprove? Gabriel said, basically, nothing good will come of it. Let's look more specifically.
Hey, Mrs. Ferris.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I gotta go.
Oh, no, that's fine. Have a good week. We'll see you next time. I'll post the rest of this, so you can watch it. Let me see if I can find page 57. Oh, here's what he actually says to Emma. "Whoever might be her parents, whoever may have had the charge of her, it does not appear to have been any part of their plan to introduce her into what you would call good society. After receiving a very indifferent education, she is left in Mrs. Goddard's hands to shift as she can, to move, in short, in Mrs. Goddard's line, to have Mrs. Goddard's acquaintance. Her friends evidently thought this good enough for her. And it was good enough. She desired nothing better herself, till you chose to turn her into a friend. Her mind had no distaste for her own set, nor any ambition beyond it. She was as happy as possible with the Martins in the summer. She had no sense of superiority then. If she has it now, you have given it. You have been no friend to Harriet Smith, Emma." Now, this is a part of a Jane Austen novel and Jane Austen world that's hard for us. that people had certain social circles in which they were accustomed to move. And everybody knew what they were. And so Harriet is here, and the Martins are here. And they got along wonderfully, and it would be a wonderful life for Harriet with a good guy. But Emma has said, oh no, you're better than that. Who does she want to set her up with?
Mr. Elton.
Mr. Elton, the pastor, right? Who is not Woodhouse or Knightley level, but isn't Martin level, right? He's, upper middle class, right? He gets invited to the right sorts of dinner parties because he's the pastor. And that's the life she wants for Harriet. Mr. Knightley realizes you're creating a monster. You're making your own creature, Emma. Only not sewing together dead bodies this time. You are creating a desire, a taste for something that she's really not qualified to fill or have. Because nobody that you're thinking of is going to marry her. She's from an unknown family. Again, this is foreign to us, right? This is what most of us wouldn't let that stop us. Like, I love you, I don't care what your family's like. But they would. It would be a blot on some guy's record, his wife. We don't know where his wife came from. We don't know who she is. Nobody's going to do that. Least of all, Mr. Elton. So yeah, she has cultivated tastes that aren't going to be able to be seen through. So here's another thing that Mr. Knightley says earlier. She will grow just refined enough to be uncomfortable with those among whom birth and circumstances have placed her home. You're going to make her uncomfortable with the people that she should be around and want the company of people who aren't going to accept her. Just a second, I'm trying to think. They're talking about Emma's good looks right after he says that. I either depend more upon Emma's good sense than you do. And I believe he's talking to Miss Taylor, Mrs. Weston. I either depend more upon Emma's good sense than you do, or am more anxious for her present comfort, for I cannot lament the acquaintance. How well she looked last night. I think it's a fine relationship. And she says, she is loveliness itself, Mr. Knightley, is not she? Isn't Emma lovely? He says, I have not a fault to find with her person, he replied. I think her all you describe. I love to look at her, and I will add this praise, that I do not think her personally vain. Considering how very handsome she is, she appears to be little occupied with it. Her vanity lies another way. He doesn't say she's not vain at all. Her vanity lies another way. Her vanity doesn't lie in looking in the mirror all the time and thinking, oh, I'm so good looking. Where does her vanity lie? What do you think is the other way that her vanity lies?
Setting up matchmaking.
Possibly. You know what I'm good at? I'm good at reading people's situations and emotions perfectly. This might be a really good time to talk about the big, big thing that she totally misread. Did she believe that Mr. Elton was in love with Harriet?
She did.
Oh, she totally believed it. And was he?
No.
In fact, this is hilarious. I think it's hilarious. They're going to the dinner party at the Westons, the night of the horrible snow. They're all going to get trapped. And she gets in the carriage with John Knightley. So, first of all, let's make sure we all understand this. Who is Mr. Knightley to Emma? What is their relationship?
Her brother, pretty much.
Basically, how are they specifically linked?
Because of Emma's sister's marriage.
Emma's sister is married to whom?
Is a relative of Mr. Knightley.
Mr. Knightley's brother. So Mr. Knightley's brother is married to Emma's sister. So they're like in-laws, but once removed, right? Mr. Knightley's brother, John Knightley, is Emma's brother-in-law. But other than that, they have no connection. It just so happens that their siblings are married to each other. And so she gets in the carriage with John Knightley. Does anybody remember what Mr. John Knightley is like? Mr. Knightley's brother? How does he strike you?
Very formal.
He's very formal. Does he like dinner parties? Does anybody remember? He kind of complains all the time. He's a little grumpy. But he gets into the carriage with Emma, and he sees how she's been talking to Mr. Elton. And of course, she thinks this is going great. I got him almost set up. He's going to pop the question to Harry at any time now. And Mr. Knightley, John Knightley, says he seems to have a great deal of goodwill towards you. Me? She replied with a smile of astonishment. Are you imagining me to be Mr. Elton's object? Such an imagination has crossed me, I own, Emma, and if it never occurred to you before, you may as well take it into consideration now. Mr. Elton in love with me? What an idea. I do not say it is so, but you will do well to consider whether it is so or not, and regulate your behavior accordingly. Ooh, this, even though it's the lady, it's the gentleman, you don't give pain, right? If you are not interested in someone, you don't lead them on. Cardinal rule number 1 of boy-girl relations, right? In this time, it should be in all times. If you're not really legit interested in a long-term relationship, don't act like you are. And that's what he tells her. I speak as a friend, Emma. You'd better look about you and ascertain what you do and what you mean to do. I thank you, but I assure you, you are quite mistaken. Mr. Elton and I are very good friends and nothing more. And she walked on, amusing herself in the consideration of the blunders which often arise from a partial knowledge of circumstance, and of the mistakes which people of high pretensions to judgment are forever falling into. Isn't it amusing? These people who think they know, and they don't know. It's just very entertaining. Oh my goodness. Emma, that is you. And of course, she discovers this. It all blows up on her. And why does she think Mr. Elton, what does she think of Mr. Elton after he has his little outburst in the carriage? And what is her opinion of him? I wrote down several things. So why does she think, she gives one possible reason right away. You're drunk. He says this, she felt that half this folly must be drunkenness. He has had too much to drink at the dinner party. He does not know what he is saying. He does know, however. As she thought less of his inebriety, he's inebriated. What is it? Inebriety? Inebriation. I would probably, inebriety. She thought more of his inconstancy and presumption. You were just in love with Harriet. How could you dump Harriet? Oh, Emma, you never. This is an unsteadiness of character. How could you change so quickly? Then, next chapter, She calls him proud, assuming, and conceited. Now, this is the big paragraph, though. Contrary to the usual course of things, Mr. Elton's wanting to pay his addresses to her had sunk him, in her opinion. His professions and his proposals did him no service. She thought nothing of his attachment and was insulted by his hopes. He wanted to marry well, means above his station, marry into a higher social class, and having the arrogance to raise his eyes to her, pretended to be in love. But she was perfectly easy as to his not suffering any disappointment that needed to be cared for. There was no real affection either in his language or manners. Sighs and fine words had been given in abundance, but she could hardly devise any set of expression or fancy any tone of voice less allied with love. But that he should talk of encouragement, should consider her as aware of his views, accepting his attentions, meaning, in short, to marry him, should suppose himself her equal in connection or mind, look down upon her friend, so well understanding the gradations of rank below him, and be so blind to what rose above as to fancy himself showing no presumption in addressing her, it was most provoking. How dare he think he is of a social status to even think he has a chance with me? What has Emma been doing all this time?
She's been setting him up, so to speak.
With someone of his own social class?
I want to say no.
With some unknown girl, unknown family, with no money. She expected him to do the same thing that she doesn't want to do. Marry down, we would say. I'm not marrying down, but he can marry down. Does Emma know this about herself? You know, I don't think she does. See, this is the humor. This is the humor of Jane Austen. We know. Emma is clueless. But we're not. We see it. Now, did any of you before that happened, did any of you figure out that Harriet was not the object of Mr. Elton's attentions? Did any of you figure it out?
I kind of did, yeah.
Did you suspect?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Emma, what a wonderful painting you've done of Harriet. He's gushing over the painting. And she's like, oh, he likes Harriet so much. Everything he says is about something Emma did. And then it shocks her, you know, I'm sorry, Harriet can't come to the dinner party. She's ill, so you probably don't want to come. Oh, are you going to be there? Oh, yeah, I'll come. So, yeah, John Knightley, her brother-in-law, does see it. Emma does not see it. Oh, my goodness. Okay, before I move on to the Bateses, oh, my goodness. Let me see if there's anything. Okay, let me just stop and ask this general question. Do you think Emma really cares about Harriet?
Not really. It almost seems like she's using her more for a object than for matchmaking.
It does seem that way. But what is her reaction after the whole Mr. Elton blow up? What occurs to Emma? What makes Emma feel bad?
That she just set Harriet up.
Yeah, and how is Harriet going to feel?
She's going to feel bad.
Yeah. And does Emma care that she's going to feel bad?
She does.
She does. She does. And a matter of fact, when she gets up the next day, she actually says, well, Jane Austen says this about her thoughts. The first error and the worst lay at her door. It was foolish, it was wrong to take so active a part in bringing any two people together. It was adventuring too far, assuming too much, making light of what ought to be serious, a trick of what ought to be simple. She was quite concerned and ashamed, and resolved to do such things no more. Here have I, she said, actually talked poor Harriet into being very much attached to this man. She might never have thought of him but for me, and certainly never would have thought of him with hope, if I had not assured her of his attachment, for she is as modest and humble as I used to think him. Oh, that I had been satisfied with persuading her not to accept young Martin. There I was quite right. Is she starting to understand herself a little bit?
A tiny bit.
Yeah, but completely? No. No. Oh, yeah, she so should blow off Robert Martin. She should not marry him. But, this is unfortunate. Her feelings are going to be hurt. This is all my fault. I'm going to have to break it to her gently because she's really become attached to Mr. Elton. So she feels the pain. So, I don't know. I believe, as the reader, I believe she cares about Harriet. She's not just utterly a tool to Emma. But Emma doesn't completely understand that she's using her. She thinks in her mind, I'm a good friend. All right, the Bateses. What do we know about the Bateses and Jane Fairfax? Can anybody tell me anything about the Bateses and Jane Fairfax?
They're not a very high-born family. He doesn't really like talking with them, or she avoids their house.
Yes. She doesn't like to pay calls. Mrs. Bates is old. Very, very old. A little hard of hearing. Miss Bates is her daughter. If she's Miss Bates, she's never married. She is what they used to call an old maid. She's never married, so, as I talked about before, she's lived with her mother. And apparently they have enough to get by. But they're not well off. And she has a niece named Jane Fairfax, who's been living with a family, a army captain. Her father has died. Her father was an army man, and this fellow army man took Jane in, and she's been sort of a foster daughter, been a ward to them. But now Jane is growing up. She's getting too old to be that status anymore, and they're not sure what they're going to do with her. I asked you, what is Emma's opinion of the Bateses and of Jane Fairfax?
Doesn't Mrs. Bates talk a lot?
Miss Bates talks just a lot. Here's her opinion. She had had many a hint from Mr. Knightley, and some from her own heart, as to her deficiency. In other words, I don't call on them enough, because it's polite to call on people. But none were equal to counteract the persuasion of its being very disagreeable, a waste of time, tiresome women, and all the horror of being in danger of falling in with the second rate and third rate of Highbury. The type of people that pay the Bateses calls are not the social circle that I really run in. But okay, I got to do it. And this is what she's greeted with. This is Miss Bates. Oh, yes, Mr. Elton, I understood, certainly as to dancing. Mrs. Cole was telling me that dancing at the rooms at the Bath was, Mrs. Cole was so kind as to sit with us time with us, talking of Jane. For as soon as she came in, she began inquiring after her. Jane is so very great a favorite there. Whenever she's with us, Mrs. Cole does not know how to show her kindness enough. And I must say that Jane deserves it as much as anybody can. And so she began inquiring after her directly, saying, I know you have heard from Jane lately because it is not her time for writing. When I immediately said, but indeed we have. We had a letter this very morning. I do not know that I ever saw anybody more surprised. Have you, upon my honor? No, I'm going to stop because I'm tired of it, but Miss Bates. Now, just so that we don't get the wrong impression, I want to read what we heard about Miss Bates at the very beginning of the book. It says, she loved everybody, was interested in everybody's happiness, quick-sighted to everybody's merits, thought herself a most fortunate creature, and surrounded with blessings and such an excellent mother, and so many good neighbors and friends, and a home that wanted for nothing. The simplicity and cheerfulness of her nature, her contented and grateful spirit, were a recommendation to everybody and a mine of felicity to herself. She was a great talker upon little matters, which exactly suited Mr. Woodhouse, full of trivial communications and harmless gossip. Is Miss Bates a nice sort? Oh, she's so nice. I'm just so fortunate. I'm so blessed, and my mom is here, and Jane Fairfax. Oh, Jane, she's lovely, and she's going to come visit. And we got a letter from her, and oh, everybody's so nice to me, and nice people come and pay me visits. But what's Emma's opinion? Oh, tiresome women, so disagreeable. She never shuts up. That's Emma's reaction, right? And then don't even get started about Jane. She heard that Jane was coming for a visit. Emma was sorry. Oh, to have to pay civilities to a person she did not like through 3 long months, to be always doing more than she wished and less than she ought. Why she did not like Jane Fairfax might be a difficult question to answer. Mr. Knightley had once told her it was because she saw in her the really accomplished young woman which she wanted to be thought herself. Jane's a good singer, Jane's a good piano player, Jane's a good this, Jane's a good that, Jane's a good drawer. Jane is lovely. Jane is so polite. Jane. But that's what Emma wants to be. Mr. Knightley, who seems to be a pretty good judge of character, and the only one who ever tells Emma she's doing something wrong, thinks she's jealous. So, she meets up with Jane, and she's not so bad. She's actually quite nice. It says these were charming feelings, but not lasting. Before she had committed herself by any public profession of eternal friendship for Jane Fairfax, or done more towards a recantation of past prejudices and errors, Jane spent an evening at Hartfield with her grandmother and aunt, and everything was relapsing much into its usual state. Former provocations reappeared. The aunt was as tiresome as ever, more tiresome, because anxiety for her health was now added to admiration of her powers. In other words, she's worried, are you okay, Jane? Are you feeling well, Jane? Oh, Jane, wonderful. They had to listen to a description of exactly how little bread and butter she ate for breakfast, and how small a slice of mutton for dinner, as well as see an exhibition of new caps and new work bags for her mother and herself. And Jane's offenses rose again. Jane Fairfax, I hate her. But I do my job, right? I go see her, because that's what a person has to do. All right. So, has Emma realized that maybe she's not been 100% good for Harriet? Yeah. Does she realize what she's really like at this point? She doesn't. Jane is diligent and practices everything. In fact, let me read a section. This was kind of a disjointed but quite amusing section, where Jane Austen tells us a lot about Emma without telling us. It's when she's going to do Harriet's portrait, right? And of course, Mr. Elton's. Oh yeah, you should do that because you're a wonderful artist. It says, what an exquisite possession a good picture of her would be. I would give any money for it. I almost long to attempt her likeness myself. You do not know it, I dare say, but 2 or 3 years ago I had a great passion for taking likenesses, and attempted several of my friends, and was thought to have a tolerable eye in general. But from one cause or another, I gave it up in disgust. I was doing that for a while, but I gave it up. And she just leaves at that, but on the next page, we get this. Emma wished to go to work directly and therefore produced the portfolio containing her various attempts at portraits, for not one of them had ever been finished. That they might decide together on the best size, for Harriet. Her many beginnings were displayed. Miniatures, half-lengths, whole lengths, pencil, crayon, and watercolors had all been tried in turn. She had always wanted to do everything and had made more progress both in drawing and music than many might have done with so little labor as she would ever submit to. She played and sang and drew in almost every style, but steadiness had always been wanting, and in nothing had she approached the degree of excellence which she would have been glad to command and ought not to have failed of. She never follows through. She could be good, but she never does it. So she gets out these portraits. And here's a description of, I was working on this one. Listen if you can see something similar in all her descriptions. Oh, dear Mrs. Weston, always my kindest friend on every occasion. She would sit whenever I asked her. There is my sister, and really quite like her own little elegant figure, and the face not unlike. I should have made a good likeness of her if she would have sat longer. But she was in such a hurry to have me draw her 4 children. She would not be quiet. Then, here come all my attempts at 3 of those 4 children. Here they are, Henry and John and Bella, from one end of the sheet to the other, and any one of them might do for any of the rest. She was so eager to have them drawn that I could not refuse. But there is no making children of 3 or 4 years old stand still, you know. Nor can it be very easy to take any likeness of them beyond the air and complexion. What does she do both times? I almost finished my sister, but
She blames the others.
she always has an excuse. Well, I didn't finish it. I just couldn't. She just wouldn't sit still, and she wanted me to draw the children. Oh, well, I tried to draw the children. Children don't sit still very long. She has an excuse for everything. So keep in mind, Jane Austen hasn't actually said any of these things, right? I mean, a couple of times she has said that she gets too much her own way. But the fact that she never follows through, she's flighty, she dabbles in this and she dabbles in that. That's what Emma is like. And I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. I want you to read chapters 21 through 37. This book has sort of parts. It's not literally got section 1, section 2, section 3. But the part we read for this week is basically Mr. Elton, right? The issue with Harriet and Mr. Elton. We're going to move on in the second part and meet someone who's been rumored about. Frank Churchill. We have not met Frank Churchill. Who is Frank Churchill? Just as a reminder, because he's gonna dive in here.
Isn't he related to the Weston?
Yes, Miriam. It is Mr. Weston's son. His previous wife is dead. He's a widower. And Frank Churchill was young when his mom died and went to live with his mom's sibling, right? It's his uncle and aunt.
Yeah.
With his mom's family. And he took their name, Churchill, instead of Weston, which is kind of a slap in the face to Mr. Weston a little bit, but he was living with them. And he's just always said he's going to come visit and meet his new stepmother, Mrs. Weston, but he has never been. We have not met Mr. Frank Churchill yet, but we are going to. I actually, before I let you go, I wanted to leave you this. Read this, and then I can leave you with this to mull over. It's okay that you've packed up your stuff. So the Mr. Elton thing has blown up. But they live in the same town. The town is not very large. It says, they're being fixed, so absolutely fixed in the same place was bad for each, all 3. Not one of them had the power of removal or of effecting any material change of society. They must encounter each other and make the best of it. I am going to go to church where Mr. Elton is preaching. And we both know he tried to get me to marry him in that carriage, and I said, what are you, nuts? And I spurned him. He knows, they all three know everything. He knows that Harriet was the intended target. And it's like, are you kidding me? I would never marry Harriet. Harriet knows, and everybody knows that the other two know. But they can't get away from each other. In the modern world, if you had an awkward situation with someone, might you try to arrange it so you don't really run into them? I don't think anybody would blame you. In the Quad Cities, would that be pretty easy?
Yeah.
Sure. What if you lived in, I don't know, Orion or Geneseo, or even Geneseo would probably be pretty easy. But, the smaller the community, the harder it is to arrange that. Highbury is very, very small. People don't go anywhere much. It's just in Highbury. They are going to be forced to see each other. And so my question I want to leave you with, we talked at the beginning about courtesy, politeness, manners, and how important it was once upon a time. And do you think that if you are forced to be around people, you are forced to be more polite? For example, we do have, each of us, a group of people that we can't get away from, and it's our families. If you do something really rotten to one of your siblings, not that you ever would, or they do it to you, you got to get up the next morning and see them at breakfast, right? It's awkward. You're going to have to work through it and be nice to each other, or just be miserable for the rest of your life, because there's no getting away from them. Other people we can kind of get away from. This is what Jane Austen said. In Jane Austen's world, in a world like Highbury, there's no getting away from Mr. Elton. Every time they look at each other, it's like, you remember? I was so offended. You're going to be forced to get over it. And I just think it's interesting that we're very mobile as a society. And if we can just dump everybody, get in the car and move to another state. You guys can't. Don't do that yet. You could eventually, though, but don't. Don't just diss everybody and move. But you could if you wanted to or had to, and they can't. And I just thought it was curious. I wonder how manners are related to the fact of being stuck with people. So you might as well be nice to them because they're not going away. Okay, read the chapters, write the Frankenstein paper, and I will see you next week. Bye. Stay warm. Be careful out there.